What's up, you awesome kisters? It is CistReactZ here, guys. Today we are reacting to FNAF Into the Pit. Has a lot of unused graphics. Lost Bits TetraBitGaming. So make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to TetraBitGaming, and comment down below in their video. And make sure you do the same to me because we are on a road to 800,000 subscribers. Also, if you guys did not know, tomorrow Nintendo is going to have 2 Nintendo Directs. That's going to be streamed on my YouTube channel. So if you have not, go to the live section of my YouTube channel or just to the front page of my YouTube channel. And there should be a stream that has me reacting in it, and just hit the like button on that stream, turn on all notifications, and yeah, we're gonna be reacting to that stream tomorrow. Also, I got early access coverage for Star Wars Outlaws from Ubisoft, so make sure you guys go check that out as well. Let's get into this.
Hey guys, and welcome back to another Lost Bits video
Motorist,
right
such
here
a
on
good
TetraBitGaming,
man.
the series where we explore the unused, altered, and unseen content in gaming. Starting in this video, we are diving into the pit of unused content found in Five Nights at Freddy's Into the Pit. And there is a lot to go over in this game. Some might say Into the Pit may even rival a certain other game in the series in terms of the sheer amount of content that didn't get used.
Dang, security breach?
In this first video,
that's crazy.
we'll be focusing on a whole bunch of graphics that don't go used, as there is a ton of these left over. Like, seriously a lot. Enough to fill up more than an entire video. Also, I have a Steam key for a copy of Into the Pit to give away, so drop a comment saying who your favorite
this little wiener who's always got his hands in his pocket.
Winner 24 hours after this video goes live. And with all of that said, smack that like button below for a free hug from a certain yellow rabbit. It's time to hop into the pit.
Yeah, y'all heard him. Smack the like button on my video.
And find some lost bits.
I'm just a messenger.
Alright, so to kick things off, I think it's very important to go over how FNAF Into the Pit was basically completely overhauled over the course of its development, at least visually. And this is for the simple fact that in the second interview with Dawko, according to series creator Scott Cawthon, the game was not only originally going to be made in a 16-bit Super Nintendo style, but that the game was actually also originally once planned to be available on actual physical Super Nintendo carts that would fully function on real hardware too.
I must have forgot that.
To be a little novelty one-off, like, oh yeah, here's this little company that makes 16-bit cartridges, and that was immediately appealing to me because I'm all about the Super Nintendo, and so if I could make something that would come on the Super Nintendo cartridge, sign me up.
Huh, sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I must have forgot that part.
Making their games available on physical carts is part of the developer's shtick that made Into the Pit, Mega Cat Studios. However, the decision was eventually made to move away from the physical cart aspect of this game so more players could play the game on PC and consoles. And don't get me wrong, I definitely get wanting to make the game more accessible, but honestly, I think still having the option of getting this game on Super Nintendo—
Nah, dude, imagine, like, having the Into the Pit cartridge. Like, that looks so cursed. Like, nah, I would have definitely wanted that, though.
Nintendo carts would have made for an awesome special edition of the game or something.
Yeah, seriously.
Anyways, all that to say that although the game's direction was moved from essentially being a Super Nintendo game, there are still numerous leftovers that seem to be remnants of this original design left over in the release build of the game, including sprites of backgrounds, objects, and characters too.
What is that heart?
So yeah,
it looks like he has a
beard.
beard.
Some unused SNES-style sprites for the living room in Oswald's home. There's the background itself, as well as early versions of several set pieces, including the living room sofa, table and chairs, this lamp, as well as a smaller and bigger cabinet. And then similarly, there's an early Super Nintendo version of Oswald's parents' bedroom, as well as this set of objects like the bed, some shelving, and more meant for it. And also similarly, there are some early SNES graphics for Jeff's Pizza, as well as Freddy Fazbear's Pizza in the past. For Jeff's Pizza in the game's present, there are early graphics for 2 rooms, Jeff's security room, as well as this hallway that seems to have been scrapped from the game, as there doesn't appear to be an equivalent area in the final cut.
Nah, bro, I feel like we got robbed. That's actually insane, though. It would be so cool if, like, Scott actually made, like, real Super Nintendo cartridges, too, because that would have meant, like, he had a deal with Nintendo, and, like, the Five Nights at Freddy's IP would probably be cleared for the next Smash or something, bro. That would have been cool. This all should have happened and not been canceled.
Going back to the early security office, what makes this extra interesting is that it
Dude,
appears...
I love how 90s this looks, man. Like the red phone on the wall, the office, the vent. Oh my god, it looks so good.
to have the exact same layout as the office in FNAF 3. Right down to the desk with the fan on the left, the garbage can,
And the window
door on the left, vent in the upper section on the left, the window is in a similar spot, and of course, probably the biggest similarity is having a box full of FNAF character masks, though here, instead of the toy versions of the characters...
Bro, what is that bear one, like, with that red mask? Like, that one looks like it's being tortured. Look at the mouth. It's like...
in FNAF 3, we got what looks like some clown masks or something. Maybe a reference to Carnival?
Something
Although
cool.
the final design of the maybe a reference to Carnival?
Something cool that maybe foreshadows Carnival pending J-Top stats.
Although the final design of the security room in the past is kind of similar, the similarities are definitely more noticeable with the present version
Bro's
of
playing
the office.
cards.
In fact, there's a leftover ability to overlay the old version of the office, as the developers used it as a reference when making this new one. By doing so, we can see how things like the box of masks, trash bin, and desk are all basically in the same place. But Jeff's monitors have now replaced the old window. Interestingly, there's also some sort of mode for the old version of the office where the window would like start to glow or something. It's pretty neat. Then also, for all three of these early rooms that I went over, you probably noticed the blank lower third of the sprites, and it's likely that this section of the screen was planned to be reserved for dialogue or perhaps a heads-up display similar to something like what's seen in the original Legend of Zelda. Then next...
What's funny was, I was gonna say, like with the old NES layouts, it looks like something, like, in an old game where you would, like, have to pull up the screen and then it says, like, you know, type where you want to go or something like that, or, like, push the button to where you want to go.
Also for Jeff's Pizza is an early version of the present ball pit that's central
Dude,
to
that
this
looks so
game
cool.
and its title. And as a nice way to transition to the past version of this building, there are sprites left over for an animation of some kids playing in this same ball pit too.
Wow.
Basically the same as is seen when Oswald first emerges from the pit.
Oh, I didn't
in the
even
past
notice
at
that.
the start
What
of
the
the
hell?
game. Then also for the ball pit room, left over unused in the files is an early version of the Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica mural seen there. Yeah, here the animatronics look infinitely more creepy.
Ah, hell nah. I never want to get caught by Chica looking like that. And then Freddy, I don't even know, he looks like a dog. Bonnie, he looks like he's on some shit. He's even jumping like he's on... I need to move my camera so y'all can see that. This man is probably on 15 ounces of fast powder. Like, I don't even know, bro. I don't even know why my camera's down here. It's usually up here.
Like, that's giving me nightmares for sure. And, interestingly enough, this mural can be re-implemented into the game too. And in addition to Bonnie being super creepy and purple here,
and on crack,
purple, not blue, he can also be seen holding a different style of guitar, his original Flying V that he used to be depicted playing in earlier games, instead of the other style guitar that he's been using for the last couple of years now.
Oh,
now, I'm
I didn't even
assuming
notice
this change was made since the Flying V guitar is made by the Gibson guitar brand.
I didn't even notice that they
much
changed
like the
that.
other games made over the last few years in the series, in order to avoid any sort of copyright complications, they had to go with the new made-up design. Anyways, next, also for the animatronics, there are several sprites meant for the backstage room, including an early version of Fred Boy himself. There's these
Fred
shelves
Bear.
with a bunch of animatronic heads of
Oh,
Bonnie,
Spring
Freddy,
Bonnie
and
head.
Chica, but interestingly, there are also two of the Yellow Rabbit as well. There's this sprite of an Endo 2 with Chica's feet beside it, as well as another
Chica's
pair of
feet.
Endos with one rocking Chica's head, similar to the one seen in the final version of the backstage. Then another interesting
creepy
set
at
of
all.
early sprites for the pizzeria are for an animation of the Golden Freddy hiding spot, presumably for when the player would enter and exit it. And what I find more interesting about this is that it looks like Golden Freddy was going to be seen standing as opposed to his iconic sitting position that it was changed to in the final cut.
Yeah.
And then lastly, for the background objects in the pizzeria, there are sprites for various arcade machines as well as the ticket eater. These early...
Like, I don't know, call me a nerd or some shit, but like, bro, I'm like geeking out, like, mentally over these, like, old graphics. I love old type of games.
machines look a lot more generic compared to the ones seen in the final version, where they're basically all unique. So this is a change I think was made for the better. Next up, there are early version graphics also thought to be for the Super Nintendo version of other miscellaneous
I hope they release this Super Nintendo version as like its own
there are
game.
animations of its eyes shining or something.
Oh god.
There's a chunk of cheese, perhaps meant
Chunk
to have
of
been
cheese?
used as part of the rat trap section of the game. And then there's also this blood pressure device, and this is probably related to a scrapped heart rate mechanic in the game. Now, I'll revisit this more when I get around to going over
That
the
would've been
dev
cool.
build of the game that was leaked for the Nintendo Switch. But basically, there was a mechanic for when Oswald would hide in the vent where the player would have to move a heart icon up and down to match the heartbeat line that would move across the screen in order to not get detected.
I would fail that every
Anyways,
time.
next,
I would
there
fail
are
that
early
all the
sprites
time,
for
bro.
animations of several of the game's characters. For the animatronics, there's actually only early Super Nintendo sprites for Chica, and these are of her searching under a tablecloth, as well as for her running, two things that I don't believe she's ever seen doing in the final release of the game.
Chica
And
running
for
with
the
her arms
kids, you have
stretched
an
is
early
crazy.
version of Chip, or Child 5, as he's referred to in the files, getting scared. And then there are various early sprites of Mike, including
Like, no, I can definitely see why they, like, replaced this model, though. Because, like, bro looks like he has a whole 5 o'clock shadow right there.
an idle animation, him playing skee-ball, looking for something, walking, talking, as well as eating something. Now, what's also noteworthy
So
here
weird.
is that two of these early sprite sets feature Mike with the design on his shirt, while the rest don't. And the ones that don't also have his face shaded differently. I've seen some suggest that this might be a beard,
That's
but I think that's unlikely given.
Bro, you might just be fucking Mike. Who was that?
I've seen some suggest that this might be a beard.
Is that what he looks like? I've never seen TetraBit's face before. But, like, bruh, that dude might just be early version of Mike. Like, they made that based off of his face.
But I think that's unlikely given the likely age of Mike, so it's more likely that this is just shadowing on his face instead. Then next, we of course have a whole bunch of early sprites of the game's protagonist, Oswald, also thought to be remnants from the Super Nintendo version. And
Damn! That ball pit kicked his ass! Yo! I'm glad they replaced that model. That, bro, he's tweaking. Like, that's all I can say. Like,
these include sprites for numerous animations.
I'll be more
including
scared of him
Oswald
than
escaping from
Springtrap.
something, presumably the yellow rabbit, with and without a flashlight.
is he in the
Oz
gritty?
getting in and out of a kitchen counter, him interacting, getting into a locker, hiding under a table from various directions in both a regular and faster version, a pair of animations for him hiding under a bed, him being shocked, getting in and out of a chest, opening the freezer door, apparently opening up a glass door, reaching for something meant for a cutscene during night 4, Oswald looking up and getting scared, then sweating and looking back
sweating's
down.
cool.
A sideways animation of him talking meant for night 1, and then there are also animations for two actions Oswald can't do in the final cut of the game. Blowing a flame in order to melt some ice, as well as jump.
That would have been cool.
Now, the ice melting was something that the player was once supposed to do during night 2, likely to get another item in the game. Probably in the freezer, as that opening animation I mentioned earlier was also meant for night 2. And then it's unclear if jumping would have been just something that Oswald would do during a certain cutscene, or if it was actually going to be a part of his moveset. But either way, it never ended up getting used.
Bro, I'd rather
And
him
lastly,
jumping
there's
than
also
tripping
an
around
animation
all
of
day.
Oswald getting grabbed and shaken by the yellow rabbit. But interestingly here, this is like a blend of styles, as Spring Bonnie here isn't using 16-bit SNES coloring, and for the final frame of this animation, Oswald uses his final design, which is kinda weird to see. And of course, we can't forget about our man Jeff here, and he also has some early animations left over. There are sprites for him talking, walking, and exhaling, looking
Damn!
just as miserable in
My god, why? Is he using red mascara or blood under his eyes? Like,
these as ever.
Bro's
I
dead.
think it's really cool to see all of these early style sprites. Pretty crazy that it looks like the entire game was pretty far along before the decision was made to remake a bunch of the assets. And honestly, I think it's even more crazy that these were still left over in the launch build of the game. And now, for the second half of this video, there are also a whole ton of unused graphics left over in the game from the final style that it took. For starters, there are some early versions of the buildings seen on the game's map screen. We got an old version of the library building where it looks a lot more run down, and honestly, with the large books text, it looks a lot more like a bookstore than a library.
Yeah.
Then we also got this early design of the mill, where it looks completely different and has a little water wheel going on in the front here. Next, there's an early version of Oswald's home with a different design, mainly lacking the front porch seen in the final one. And then lastly, there's a graphic for a scrapped town square area featuring a nice little fountain. I guess this was once intended to be an area for the player to visit, but no such area is ever seen in the final cut. And speaking of areas that the player was once planned to visit, apparently there were plans for the player to actually go inside the library instead of just interacting with characters outside of it, as left over in the game is a completely scrapped librarian character that would have presumably been found inside the library. Yeah, a librarian in a library. Checks out. For this librarian, in addition to idling, we also have animations of her bending over and speaking, walking, as well as adjusting her glasses and dusting off her skirt. So yeah, definitely looks like there were more plans
I like how creative they are with it.
than what we ended up getting.
Idle animations so she doesn't look too dead.
In my first playthrough, I only went there like once, so it definitely felt underutilized. And since we're talking about the early buildings, there are actually early gameplay background graphics for them as well. There's an early background version of Oswald's home, which looks quite a bit different, notably having a chimney here, as well as white picket fence out front, which aren't present in the final version of the home. Then we also have day and night sprites for the mill area, obviously rocking the early design that we just went over earlier. This also isn't just the back of the mill, as is seen in the final build, and it certainly seems like the original idea was for the player to actually enter inside of it too. And then lastly,
it would have been cool to go inside to find the trash on the ground.
The library, where although it looks similar to its final design, yup, like I speculated earlier, it looks like it was originally, in fact, planned to be a bookstore instead of a library.
Oh.
Be it a library or bookstore, it certainly does seem like it was once planned to play a bigger part in the game.
It is pretty strange that they have like all these like buildings and you're able to go inside of it, but it's like for what purpose? So I guess I can see why they took it out. It's like, it's actually pretty crazy how like the only buildings you really go in are like 3 of them, like school and then straight to Fazbear's and straight to home. Like, it's pretty weird. You might as well not even count school because he just gave up at some point.
Then next up, there are actually leftover graphics for various rooms and objects in the game that appear to be from a style somewhere
originally in there?
between the original Super Nintendo version and what we ended up getting in the final cut. For starters, with the school, there are background graphics for the main hallway, where some things, like the stripe on the walls and power box here, look similar. Overall, we can see that it looks quite different. And also for the school, left over are some early lockers where they can be seen a bit taller compared to what they look like in the final game.
God, I didn't realize how small those lockers were.
We first have an early version of Oswald's room, which notably has its layout flipped compared to the final version. Then we got early background graphics for Oswald's basement, one with the window open, and then one with it closed, and with an added table complete with a nice bloody knife here. Seeing that randomly pop up in the basement honestly would have been pretty cool to see in the game. And then there are also several early objects for the dining room area.
But people would have been theorizing.
Of the calendar, some shelves, a chair, cabinet, as well as a hatch leading up to the attic, which seems to reveal that originally the player would be able to get to the attic from the dining room instead of the one hallway as it was ultimately changed to. Then onto the pizzerias, we got early versions of the ball pit room for both the present, where it looks really basic, as well as the past.
Oh wow.
Both of these look quite a bit smaller than how the room is seen in the final version, and we can also notably still see the early animatronic mural on the wall
Very
here.
terrifyingly.
And interestingly, we can also see the sun and rainbow art on the wall, and this is something that did go on to remain in the final version.
That's
so
cool.
with how this rainbow was near the edge of the room there, we can see just how much this room was expanded. And much like the even earlier ball pit graphic I went over earlier, there's also a slightly updated one, but still different than the final design. And interestingly, you can still enable this graphic in-game to see just how different it is compared to the final design. Also here, and for all of these early rooms, we can see that the entrance is seen as a door on the left side.
Y'all ever wonder if there are like different universes? Like, in a different universe, did we get all of this and what's like in the hidden files what we actually have in this universe? I don't know why I just started thinking about that shit. I don't know why this video just became deep, but like, do y'all ever just think about that?
Instead of being towards the player, as it's seen in the
like
final,
another universe kind of got fucked over in a way,
there are
kind of.
various graphics that
That's
were
crazy.
planned to appear in the foreground, and these appear to be just bigger versions of stuff like the rocking horse and slide that are seen there normally. And there are these early foreground graphics for both the present as well as past version 2.
Why is there a slide in
Then,
there?
just outside of the ball pit room, if we remove the door that leads
Bro,
to
what
it,
is she
we
hitting?
find
The
a
Charlie
normally
Brown? What is
unseen
that?
little sign there
What
that
dance is-
just reads play area. I
What are these
assume this was meant
dances?
to be a sign that would be placed over top of the door to indicate what was inside. Next, we have similar background graphics for the pizzeria basement, again in both a past and present variety. And for the basement, there are also various other unused object sprites, including stuff like a furnace, a shelf, some chairs, a chest, table, a poster of a pea, a golf club, a quill, yeah, I don't know. As well
Slingshot?
as a pair of seemingly busted arcade machines. And interestingly enough, it looks like this early version of the basement room is actually still left over in the Switch dev build that was leaked. So we'll chat more about it in a future video when I dive more into that dev build. So we talked a bunch about the old security room earlier, but left over in the game for the past version of the room, we also have this sprite of Chica's head. And this is apparently supposed to be the Chica's head that's seen in FNAF 3.
Wow.
And then for the present version, we also have an early version of Jeff's monitors, where their contents can be seen flipped compared to the final version. Then also for the security
I wonder why they
office, there are
specifically
sprites
flipped
for
them.
an otherwise unseen night guard suit that seems to have been meant to be used there. And
wow.
it has this animation of it moving as if it were on a door that got slammed or something. Then for the dining area for Jeff's, we have some early looking graphics of chairs and tables, a menu poster, and then this other graphic that appears to have been an early version of the main stage curtains as well. And similarly, for this customer, seen in Night 2, there's also some early sprites of her chatting on the phone.
She looks like a turtle in the early
Then
one.
lastly for Jeff's Pizza, there's also this unused secret door that was meant for the arcade room. And this door can actually be re-enabled in the game, and by doing so, we can see it was meant to be hidden behind this arcade machine on the right side of the room. And furthermore, its functionality can be re-enabled too. So
what is that, Spring Bonnie's killing den?
This was actually the original way that Oswald was going to enter Afton's room where his dad is trapped, instead of having to go through a vent to get there, and the main door being revealed to be found behind the prize machine in the arcade towards the end of the game. In my first playthrough, I always thought that this peeling wall here was suspicious, and yeah, this is also referred to as Killer Door Tarp.
Oh, Killer Door.
And speaking of the arcade, there are also
they got straight to the
basically all
straight
of
to the point.
Machines seen there. The changes are often quite minimal, with just better shading or slightly different colors. Like, yeah, as seen with the Helpulese machine here, the changes aren't huge. But on the other hand, the prize machine also had a few extra changes in the old version, such as missing the Foxy mask, which is good they added it back in, as there's a severe lack of Foxy in the game, as it is.
Yeah.
The exotic Butters Bowl is smaller in the old version, and there's also these yellow balls in the bottom right. And it seems like you can still see their silhouette in the final version of the machine, and seeing these here now,
why did they get erased?
Looks kinda strange.
Yeah.
Then in addition to the early arcade machines, there are also two joystick operated ones that seem to have gotten scrapped. A pretty generic teal one, and then there's also this pink pizza slice one. And now lastly for this first video, there are several unused animations for a bunch of the game's characters. For starters, there are various unused animations of the kids that you save throughout the game. For each of them, except for
My
the first
God,
one,
why are they
there
all being
animations of them
choked?
being grabbed and shaken, presumably by the yellow rabbit, and then also animations of them being freed from whatever
Now they're all
was
hitting the
holding them,
gritty.
with an extra one for the first child where he looks more frightened. Then also for each of the kids, there are animations of them jumping into
Why? Yo, he is so damn
more
extra.
frightened. Then also for each of
He is so like, who does he think he is, bro? Like, does he think he's Mario or some shit? Why did he hit a front flip like that?
the kids, there are animations of them jumping into the ball
Bro
pit.
said Geronimo.
Suggesting that after you rescued them, you would have had to bring them to the ball pit or something.
Yo, who does this kid think he is too? Like,
And
just
in addition-
jump. They're so extra. No wonder why they got captured, bro.
To those, there are unused animations of Oswald untying Chip from the arcade machine, as well as the hammer on the machine bonking him on the head. There are nervous walking animations for the first kid you save, an unused idle animation, him crying, as well as handing Oswald some keys. What's also interesting about all of these unused sprites for this character is that he can be seen wearing a blue hat, while in the final game, he's always hatless. And it's unclear what these keys would have been for, but honestly, I think this would have fleshed out this character at least a bit more than just seeing him peace out immediately after you rescue him.
You know what? Him piecing
And
out is
the
more
file
realistic
name for
though,
this
because that's what I would have
animation
done.
Also refers to this child as Trevor, so yeah, I guess
Trevor handing
was
keys.
intended to have been his name. And then there's actually cut content for the cut content here, as there's also some unused dialogue for Trevor here for when he'd give Oswald the keys. He was
Oh, I
meant
thought he
to
was
have
gonna
said,
follow him.
I don't have the guts to stick around, but please look for Mark and help him. I hope you find your dad. I don't recall there being any Marks in the game here, so perhaps since the names are similar, Mike used to be named Mark instead. Then for the second trapped child, there's also an unused animation of him crawling out of a cabinet door. And earlier, you also might have noticed that the character that I mentioned for the second trapped child are completely different than the one that's seen in the game. And yeah, that's because I guess before the decision was made to change it to Mike, it was this guy who's apparently known as Cody. Yeah, you remember that one guy from the beginning of the game that's seen playing that one arcade game that's basically never seen again? Yeah, well, in addition to the animations I mentioned earlier, there's also an unused idle animation, him walking nervously, and then to add to that animation of him emerging from the cabinet I mentioned earlier, it's basically exactly how Mike is seen doing after you rescue him. So, based on all of this, and, well, the file names for this character referring to him as Child 2, it does look like Cody here was originally going to be the second kid that you'd rescue.
Okay.
Then after these, we also have some unused animations for Oswald as well as his dad. For starters, there are unused sprites for a cutscene animation of Oswald digging
hell is
through
this?
the ball pit
Is he
frantically,
swimming?
as well as Oswald's dad shaking his head.
My God.
Now, although I don't think it's 100% clear where these were to be used, my best guess is that it would have been for a cutscene near the start of the game after the yellow rabbit first grabs Oswald's dad and pulls him into the pit, as there, Oswald would be digging through the pit to find his dad, and then this head shaking may have been meant for after he's pulled out onto the floor. Then, much like the other kids we went over earlier, in addition to all of the early Oswald animations, there are also several that go unused in his final style, well, for the most part. These include Oswald being grabbed and shaken like the other kids with and without a flashlight. And although Oswald does get grabbed by the yellow rabbit in the game, those sprites look different, and then we
Very
got
strange.
him dialing and making a phone call, and then an animation of him apparently pulling the school fire alarm for what appears to be an also scrapped section
Why?
of the game, as we also have
The
unused
bad
sprites
ending,
for
become a
the fire alarm
delinquent.
being pulled. Now, this animation of Oswald appears to be identical to the one for him pulling the breaker switch whenever the power goes out in the pizzeria, but the sprites for pulling the fire alarm switch are distinct in the files. Now, I said for the most part earlier, as there's actually one more unused animation of Oswald getting grabbed.
My
And
God.
although he looks similar to his final design here, he actually has
Bro.
the
Those damn eyes, bro. Get that model off the screen.
Bigger, more round nose that was seen in his early
I
design.
cannot take that model
this appears to be
seriously.
another case of an in-between style being used. Then next, we also have what looks to be an unused animation of Oswald using the sticky hand. And although similar, the animation that is seen in the game has the hand stretching out much further. And then there's also this animation of Oswald opening a locker, and you may remember these as the old style lockers that we went over earlier. Then lastly for Oswald, there's actually an early version of the interaction prompt left over in the game. Instead of either being a magnifying glass, hiding icon, or bell, as is seen in the final, the old graphic would quite literally just say, interact. And as you can see, this early graphic can actually still be re-implemented in the game too.
You know, I think it's better that they added icons, because like for somebody who's new and looking for a hiding spot real quick, they probably want to see the icon of someone going down there rather than just seeing hide, you know? Having to take the second to read and assume that it might say interact next.
See it in action as well.
It's probably better.
We got a rather creepy unused animation of Oswald's dad.
Oh, hell no.
180 degrees before it quickly flashes to turn into the yellow rabbit's head. I honestly wonder at what point in the game this was originally intended to have been used.
Maybe it would have been for the table when he was sitting down as his true form. I forgot what day it was, but like it was the day where Oswald's mom told him to get the lunch box.
And then lastly, at least for
lunch bag.
Part 1, there are some creepy looking sprites referred to only as animatronic head. And apparently, this is a sprite that looks to be based on or reworked from one of Pop Goes the Weasel from the far off time of 2015. In any case, it's currently unclear where this head was going to be used. Now these definitely aren't all of the unused graphics left over.
I would be so sad to be Kane Carter. Like, I would be so happy to have like a reference to my own like game in there.
In this game.
But unfortunately, it's like in the files.
There are several others, including graphics for some unused achievements, mini-games, items. There are several others, including graphics for...
Why is it a brain?
For some unused achievements, mini-games, items,
oh man, consequences.
More unused characters with more dialogue,
Freddy with a tie.
And more. But I'll save those for follow-up videos. And there is a lot more to go over.
What the hell?
So I'm thinking this game will probably take at least like 3 videos to cover. So stay tuned for all of that in the near future, and make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell to be notified as soon as they're up. Till then though, check out some of my...
Alright, I guess that's pretty much it. If you guys want me to react to more of TetraBitGaming, make sure you guys smack that like button and subscribe and turn on all notifications for my channel. Tomorrow, we're going to be reacting to those 2 Nintendo Directs. And also, if you have not checked it out, go check out the Star Wars Outlaws early access coverage that is on my channel right now, if you want to see what that game is like and if you're thinking about buying it. Anyway, guys, I'll see you awesome kissers later. Peace out. Let me know what is your favorite, or let me know what's your favorite thing that they did not add, and let me know what you think they should have added into this game in the comments.